If you're into epic fantasy series where magic is complicated, battles are chaotic, characters drop like flies, and dragons are more terrifying than majestic, then today's book just might be for you. Today, I'll be reviewing The Fall of Dragons by Miles Cameron. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan, and today I'm covering the fifth and final book in the Traitor Son Cycle. Please check out my playlist, The Fall of Dragons. Before I dive in, here is a quick disclaimer. This review will include spoilers, not just for The Fall of Dragons, but really for the whole series. Obviously, being the last book and the culmination of everything going on, there will be spoilers. So if you're just starting the series or still making your way through it, you might want to bookmark this video and come back later. Also, a second disclaimer, I may get a few things wrong. These books are dense. I've done my best to track the major plot points and the character arcs and magical systems, but the Traitor Son Cycle is a layered beast. So if you spot something I missed or misunderstood, feel free to leave a comment. I genuinely welcome clarifications. One of my biggest criticisms about the series isn't necessarily how difficult it is to understand, but the fact that there is no easy go-to source. I've asked a lot of people, is there some kind of wiki out there that can clarify things for me? And everyone says, no, just reread the books. I'm like, they're big books. I don't have time to reread them right away, although maybe in a few years I will reread them because I did really enjoy them, even with some of my major criticisms, but we will get into all of that. This series is not easy to get into. The Traitor Son Cycle is, as I've already said, dense, multi-layered, and just incredibly complex. There are a lot of characters, a lot of moving parts, and a lot of different factions operating on multiple planes of existence. And when I say a lot, I mean you may genuinely need a flowchart, and good luck finding one. Like I said, you can't find one online. I've searched, it's rough out there. That being said, once I let go of trying to understand everything and just started appreciating each scene for what it offered, I did find myself really enjoying it more. The writing is excellent, the dialogue is very sharp, and the fight scenes are absolutely phenomenal. Even when I wasn't totally sure what was going on in the larger picture, I was completely pulled into the moment. And that is something that you're going to have to remember if you're going to take on this series, unless you can understand it better than I did from the get-go. But good luck with that. So here is my summary. The Fall of Dragons picks up in the immediate aftermath of A Plague of Swords, the book just before this. The threat of the wild, that magical force beyond the edge of the known world, has reached its breaking point. The Red Knight, our main character, aka Gabriel, must now rally everyone and everything to face a final apocalyptic confrontation. But of course, nothing in this series is ever simple. The book opens with the core characters scattered across various fronts. Gabriel is trying to hold his tenuous alliances together between humans, immortals, church officials, mercenaries, and even those from the magical realms. He continues to grapple with his own magical power and the burdens of leadership. One of the strengths of the book is watching Gabriel fully step into that leadership role while still being his sarcastic as well as calculating and sword-swinging self. The stakes in this case are not individual. They are not even territorial. They are global. Literal magic annihilation is on the line. But the story still gives us intimate character moments despite that scale. Harmodius and the other members of Gabriel's inner circle all get moments to shine. Thalia has her own arc of transformation and power, while Sals and Bad Tom provide the grounded and gritty edge that keeps the narrative from drifting too far into the cosmic. Those are some characters that you've known for quite a while, and so as the scale of this has gotten bigger, there is an appreciation for what exactly is going on in this still, very insular element in some cases that doesn't take you into the bizarreness of this world at large. I should point out that in the earliest book, there was even a fair amount of discussion about how this didn't even really feel like fantasy at times. It just felt like, in many respects, a period piece. By the end, that is no longer the case. The fantasy has become much more evident. The magic has become much more evident. There is, of course, much more going on. However, it is still going to be much more rooted in medieval Europe than I think most high fantasy might be. Now, that might sound stupid because most high fantasy, that is the paradigm, is medieval Europe, at least in terms of technological development, since ideas of kingship and all that. But in this series, especially in the beginning, you actually are having the names of countries that you might recognize. There's even this division between the Christians and Dar al-Islam. And so there's a lot. Oh, and Christianity is very much evoked. Like, they don't have some, church that sounds very Christian. No, they specifically say Christianity. So There is tapping into actual medieval history a little more in this case, but by this book, you have started to expand well beyond that, and the magic system becomes much more evident. Anyways, going back to my summary, the wild itself becomes more chaotic. The boundary between reality and the magical realm begins to dissolve, and that leads to increasingly surreal and dangerous encounters. The wild creatures, such as the wyverns and giants and shape changers, are more active as well as more violent and more intelligent than ever. Some of the best fight sequences in the series happen in this book, including large-scale battles and brutal one-on-one duels. And with that, this book brings the series to its dramatic, cosmic, and often confusing climax. And as I already said, we open where we ended with the last book. So you have the allied forces, which are jacks, orcs, wardens, bears, and more, that are falling back before the overwhelming tide of Ash's army and a near infinite horde of magically compelled boglins and corrupted beasts. The Vale of Dykesdale becomes the focal point for a final desperate stand. It's a natural fortress perfect for defense, or at least it should be. Ash, who is the great red-black dragon and metaphysical tyrant, is no longer hiding in the shadows. He begins to attack both physically and magically. His ultimate goal is to break the barrier between the real world and the ethereal and to consume all will and dominate reality. Super casual, right? Meanwhile, we're following, as I've said, our Red Knight Gabriel Murians, who is now evolved into a nearly messianic figure. At each level of the books, he seems to have a little more authority, a little more position, and at this point he is now more than just a political leader. He is, like I said, there is an element of being some kind of savior. And so his plans are going to stretch across continents and dimensions. He is coordinating the war effort even as his own magical transformation continues. He is no longer quite human in this book. And so as battle after battle rages, our beast, Ash, unleashes a new tactic of meteors, which are summoned from beyond the edge of reality. These are massive interdimensional rocks meant to wipe out entire armies in a single blow. It's Carrick, an ancient powerful Saurian mage, who manages to subtly redirect them through an impossibly complex working. The meteors miss the allied ridge by just enough. Massive casualties are still inflicted, but the entire army is not obliterated. So Gabriel launches a final sacrificial strike, riding his wyvern and wielding the fell sword. He crashes into Ash from the skyline like a missile. The blow severely wounds the dragon, and although Gabriel dies, his death marks the turning point of the war. And it is, of course, a beautifully tragic end for a character who began as a cocky mercenary and ended up a rather mythic savior character. But the work isn't done. Sauce, Tom Laughlin, and the Empress Blanche pick up the pieces and rally the remaining forces. Tamsin, the fairy queen, rescues Carrick's dying soul. Sister Amicia, the gentle nun from Lycan Carrick, who has been one of the really interesting characters all throughout this series, ascends into literal sainthood, becoming a radiant being who helps turn the tide in the ethereal. Eventually, Ash is defeated, not by brute force alone, but by 1,000 acts of courage and sacrifice and magic and faith, and the final battles are fought across the planes of existence in songs and spells and soulfire. And when the dust settles, the world is saved, but only just barely. This series was a wild ride. Honestly, I didn't know if I'd finish it at several points. It's complicated, even hard to follow, and not afraid to throw a dozen new characters or magical terms at you mid-chapter. But eventually the confusion did give way to immersion. The chaos became part of the fun. That didn't always mean that's still what I wanted, but it did just make it easier to appreciate. And I've said many, many times, the battle scenes are what stood out most for me. They are visceral and tense and often emotionally devastating. But it wasn't just war. There was political intrigue, there are clever tactics, and some truly witty dialogue. One thing I do appreciate about this is, despite all the fighting and all the political machinations and everything going on, just good quality dialogue was very much there. Sometimes I feel like that can be a weakness in a fantasy series, and this one did not have that problem. If I'm being honest, I'm not sure I absorbed everything. I might return to the series in a few years when I've forgotten enough of the details to be surprised again, but still remember enough to appreciate the larger arcs and maybe actually understand a little more this time. It feels like one of those series that rewards a second read once you know what you're in for, and I may find out. And if I do, I will almost definitely be posting about it. Who is this for? It is for fans of dense epic fantasy with deep world building and complex magical systems, and that world building is not going to be straightforward, and your understanding has to be very patient. And again, if you find some great resources to better help you understand, I encourage you to indulge in that. It is also for readers who love military strategy blended with this metaphysics and theology. Miles Cameron himself is an expert on medieval warfare, and so I think that contributes to it being such quality fight scenes. I also think people who appreciate stories that challenge you to keep up and don't handhold, you will probably enjoy this. So I'm thinking of people that might enjoy something like The Black Company or Miles' Book of the Fallen, or I think Prince of Nothing. All of those I think are ones that if you enjoy those, you can probably enjoy this too. But hey, if you have more suggestions, please let me know. Who isn't this for? Well, it's not for readers that want a straightforward narrative or clear magic rules. You're not going to have a whole lot of exposition in there that's explained to you, more details trying to flesh it out for you. I have to keep track of it as you're going along. Or anyone that's looking for a light, relaxing fantasy read, certainly not this one. There are 5 books and they are pretty strongly connected. Like, it is really hard to appreciate any one of these individually and not try to keep within the context of this larger arc. Although, again, that is something that could easily compel me to read it again, as I would want to see if that is still true. The amount that we've expanded since the first book could dramatically change how I engage with the first couple books, but it'll be a while before I get to that. If you're not a fan of constant shifts in point of view or sudden character deaths or frequent use of archaic or military language, you might also struggle here. Again, they don't explain it, so you just have to be willing to either look it up or just go with the ambiguity or your just lack of awareness. And if you like dragons that are just magical, rideable pets, or maybe you are into dragons for some other reason, yeah, Ash is not going to be the type of dragon that you're going to be interested in. I can promise you that. Emotionally, I would say that this is a 5-star finale. I generally avoid fixing actual ratings out of 5, especially since there's this emotional element. I would also say that on the flip side, logically, it's maybe 4 stars because it does have a fascinating, complex, and as well as a fast pace book. But I think that can also bring up some issues. Although honestly, by the end, I was all in. I did enjoy it. I would certainly say that Miles Cameron pulled off something genuinely grand. And even if I didn't catch every thread, I felt the weight of the story and the characters, and I think most importantly by the end, I felt the weight of those final sacrifices. And that's my take on this book and this series. I would love to hear what you guys thought about this book in particular, this series as a whole, especially if you've read all the books, or anything else that you might suggest in terms of epic fantasy series. I'm always looking for a good series. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you are enjoying this video or any of my other videos, please share them, get the word out. Love to spread the word. And don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.